CBS pulls the plug on Stephen Colbert, but was it really about money? Or did Colbert mock the wrong billionaire at the wrong time? Nearly 1 in 4 Americans over 50 are delaying retirement. We'll break down what's driving the new retirement panic and who's most vulnerable. After that, PBS and NPR just lost $1.1 billion in funding. It's the political victory conservatives have chased for decades. But is it also a blow to democracy? And finally, Trump's connection to Epstein is back in the headlines. And oh boy, is it. It's back in a big way with new scrutiny and no satisfying answers. Democrats now have Trump cornered, at least they feel that way. Plus, a lot of MAGA people are feeling like this is a disaster and they're profoundly unhappy. Nobody is really happy about what's going on with the current state of the Epstein affair, scrutiny, investigation, and disclosure. Segment one, CBS cancels Colbert, budget cuts or political payoff. CBS has announced it's canceling the late night show with Stephen Colbert, despite the fact it's been the most watched late night show for the last 8 years. So a little perspective here. TV shows get canceled all the time, but not when they're number one in the ratings, typically. The network claims the decision is purely financial, but many aren't buying that. Just 3 days before the announcement, Colbert mocked CBS's parent company, Paramount, for paying Donald Trump $16 million to settle a lawsuit, right as the company was seeking Trump's approval for a major merger. Now let's look at the numbers. In 2018, late night shows across all networks earned $439 million in ad revenue. So that's a huge business, $500 million in ad revenue just for the top 3 network late night shows. By 2024, this had been slashed to half, down to $220 million. So it's clearly an industry suffering secular decline. There's no doubt about it. Colbert's show reportedly brings in about $60 to $70 million annually, but cost almost as much to produce, perhaps even more. So it's not a great margin, especially as advertisers flee traditional TV. But Colbert isn't just any host. He's the face of political satire for half the country. Was this really about budgets or pressure? So again, to summarize the basic facts, CBS canceled the show starting in May 2026. This is, oh, you know what? I need to do a quick check. By the way, this is the Communiverse. I'm your host, TJ Walker, and I need to make sure I didn't do this properly today. I need to make sure my correct microphone is on. Yes, we are in good shape. By the way, this is sort of a soft launch of a new show. We're going to be launching formally with a lot more production, bells and whistles and music come September 2nd, 2025. This show is about looking at the top business stories, technology stories, and culture stories and analyzing them through the lens of communication skills, all with the goal of building your personal success. It's where news meets personal development. In a time when it's easy just to doom scroll and look at news and get depressed, this is about looking at news and figuring out what real lessons can I learn from me, my own career? How can I benefit from this? So that's what we're all about. So back to the Colbert cancellation. So the show generated $60 to $70 million in ad revenue, but there are some estimates that the costs were $75 million. So losing money. Again, Colbert mocked his parent company, accused them of bribing the Trump administration by paying him $16 million just 3 days before it was canceled. But it has been the number one late night show since 2017. It's extraordinarily rare for any media company to cancel its number one show. For no other reason, even if it's not profitable, it's usually great for your brand image, your reputation. But are we past that when it comes to the way the modern media world works? That's really the big question. Now, before you start passing a tin cup around for Stephen Colbert, let's remember he's going to be fine. He can do podcasts, speaking gigs, stand-up comedy, release comedy albums, more books. He's going to be making, if not just as much money as he currently does, if not $10 million a year, he's certainly going to be making $5+ million a year or more. And likely, if he positions his podcast the right way and grows a podcast, he might make more money being independent than being an employee of CBS. So let's not feel too sorry for Stephen Colbert. He's had a fantastic run and a great career and is someone I admire, like, and think is funny. But what's the bigger meaning here for you and for me? To me, a part of it is, once again, and this is a theme here, don't put faith in big media companies. They are suffering massive hemorrhaging of revenues from advertising. Why? Because it's going to podcasts, YouTube shows like mine. We don't have $400 million a year in ad revenue, but we're taking tiny little pieces away from the late night shows. So that's a big decline. So if your whole goal in life is to be the host of the Tonight Show or the Late Show, well, you can't be the host of the Late Show because the show's canceled. My advice to you is focus on creating a show you control. You control the means of production. You control the cost. I mean, my whole goal with this show, quite frankly, is to try to drive the cost of this show as close to zero as possible. Therefore, I can never be canceled by anyone. I'll never want to cancel it. And that is the problem with a show like The Late Show, is it's still sort of based on a world, a pre-internet world, a pre-social media world, where everyone in the world had basically three options to look at for entertainment on TV at night. And so almost didn't matter how bad your show was, you're going to get a third of the country. You're going to get tens of millions of people. So you could afford to pay for limousines for the guest, and you could afford to pay gigantic salaries for hosts who maybe only work 50 nights a year or 60 nights a year, half time at least. Those days are gone. They're absolutely gone. Now, I'm not taking away by any means the steam away from those who say that this was pure political. This was Paramount being craven, pandering to the Trump administration. I certainly think that that was a huge part of this and perhaps the dominant role. But I also think if you're executives at Paramount, you're looking at a lot of different factors. You're thinking, wow, we're getting all this political beating from administration. We're getting all these headaches from criticism from a late night show. We don't get criticism from Young Sheldon. We don't get criticism from running reruns of Matlock. There's no political pressure for that. Those are shows that we can reuse and monetize in different ways, and they're evergreen. You can make money off of them forever. A late night topical news show, you air it once, you can't make much money from it after that because nobody wants to hear about the day's news 6 months later, 2 years later, 5 years later. And the cost structure with a band, I mean, do you really have to have a band? I don't know. The cost structure, a sidekick. Do you really have to have a sidekick? Do you have to have a huge studio audience? All of these are questions I'm sure the Paramount team thought about and said, you know what? Why are we setting ourselves up for so many potential headaches, political pressures to end up losing money, or worst case scenario, putting a lot of time and effort into something and it only breaks even? So that's really the problem I think that they're having, which led to the cancellation of this show. But it does concern me as someone who cares about freedom of ideas, freedom of expression, the First Amendment, because we've seen countless examples of shows getting canceled, people essentially being punished, people being threatened for criticizing authorities. And my friends, that's not what goes on in a democracy. That is what goes on in authoritarian regimes. If you doubt me, then go criticize Viktor Orban in Hungary. See how long that lasts. Go ahead and try to criticize, while in Turkey, the leader of Turkey. For that matter, try to criticize the king or member of the royal family in Thailand when you're in Thailand. See how that goes. Very different societies, whether you want to call them monarchical, authoritarian, fascist. It's very different from what the United States has been traditionally. And I, for one, am not looking forward to it. Let's go to the next story. Retirement delays. Gen X holds its breath. A new national survey shows that 23% of Americans over the age of 50 are now delaying retirement, up from just 14% 1 year ago. That's a massive 64% strike in just 12 months. Why? Well, inflation, although there was more inflation a year ago, market volatility, fear of recession, and most of all, not enough savings. The median retirement savings for 55-year-olds is just $50,000. That's far below what's needed for a stable retirement, according to most financial experts. And while Social Security benefits increase by 24% if you wait until age 70 to claim them, many say they can't afford to wait that long. AARP, the American Association for Retired People, warns that more people are even pulling money out of retirement accounts just to stay afloat, robbing their future to survive the present. That's a huge, huge problem. So again, 44% of people saying they're considering delaying retirement cite inflation. Market crashes, although the day I'm recording this, the market is at an all-time high, but it has vacillated and fluctuated wildly in the last few months. But 34% say that's the reason. Low savings is also big. Now, it's very easy for a lot of financial gurus to say, tisk, 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 you didn't save enough money. Aren't you bad? You didn't delay your gratification of buying the latte every day for the last 30 years. So now you don't have enough money. That's on you. That's the easy way out. As a society, we do have a problem in that we think, okay, the market cures all ills. Well, the market does solve a lot of problems. But the shift away from companies giving defined pension programs to everyone just managing their own money, 401ks, solving the problem. It solves the problems for a lot of people. It solved my problem, but it doesn't solve the problem for most people. I do want to put this into context, though, because as bad as it is for a senior citizen to be poor, very few senior citizens in America are going hungry. Let's be honest about it. I'm not saying it never happens, but senior citizens in around 1960 were the poorest people in the country. And certainly before Social Security was instituted, you had a great chance, maybe a 1 in 4 chance of living in poverty. Today, senior citizens have the lowest poverty rate in America because there is Social Security and because their health care is paid for. In the discussion, and perhaps I'm being guilty of it here, in the discussion of all of this woe for seniors, we forget the fact that so many children in America go to bed hungry at night. So many children are never given trips to the dentist or the doctor, and that's going to cause lifetime health damage and often reduce longevity. So I do think we need to take that into account. What's the real lesson for you and me? Perhaps you're not retirement age. Chances are, if you're like most of my viewers and listeners, you're more like in your late 20s, 30s, 40s. What does this mean? Well, of course, one obvious answer is save money every single month. Spend less than you make, invest the rest. I'm not here to give you official financial advice, but I can tell you, someone like Warren Buffett says, put your money in a low-cost index fund, which is what I do. And over the long term, if you look at the last 90 or so years, people who've done that have made about 10% a year in profits. You compound that over time, even someone who makes just a little more than minimum wage, if they consistently save a significant part of their income every month, will end up a millionaire. Is it easy to save 10, 15, 20% of your monthly income? No, but it is possible. So what's the other big lesson that I think is important for you and for me? I think the whole goal of retiring, certainly at 50, is ridiculous, or at 55. And even these days, it's 65. You can do it at 62 to get your Social Security, reduced benefits, smaller level. But I think the idea of retiring in and of itself is an antiquated idea. Am I saying everyone has to work their fingers to the bone, 9 to 5 or 60 hours a week till the day they drop? No. Am I saying you shouldn't have time to travel, play with grandkids? No. I do think that it's good for human beings to wake up in the morning and have a purpose where they are helping other people. And maybe you don't charge a lot of money, but doing something in the for-profit market economy, I do think it's good for you. It helps you live longer. It helps you feel more satisfied. Look at someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He is worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. He's what, north of 75. He's out working. He's out hustling. He's making movies. He's making TV shows. He's doing podcasts. He's making documentaries. He wants to feel useful. That is his mantra. Every day, he said his father told him, get up and be useful to other people. If you do that, I'm certainly not guaranteeing you're going to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I do think there's an excellent chance you're not going to have financial worries. I mean, look at someone like Paul McCartney. He's a billionaire. He's a former Beatle. Is he just sitting around on his private island saying, I'm enjoying retirement. Let me watch more Jeopardy on TV or whatever they watch in England? No, he's out performing. He's out recording. He's out learning new instruments. He's recording different genres. And again, I'm not guaranteeing you billionaire status, but do something. Do a second career. That's why I think it's important for anybody at any stage in their career to be learning new skills, to be thinking about, if the current thing I'm doing doesn't work out, what am I transitioning to? What else can I do to give value to the world? Because if you do that, maybe you end up in something highly lucrative, like being a world-class musician where people buy billions of your albums, but maybe you end up doing something where people like it, but it's just not something people pay more than minimum wage for. Well, guess what? If you continue to do that, you'll always have an income. And if you have more income than you have outgo, if you bring in more money than what you spend, you are by definition wealthy. So that's really my personal development perspective on this is think differently. Don't buy into the myth that now the ultimate luxury is sitting back in the rocking chair and doing nothing. It's not really that fun. It's boring. In fact, the people I know who are retired, they don't enjoy vacations because when every day is a vacation, you're not getting a vacation from anything. The people who I see who are most vital at 70, at 80, at 90 are continuing to work at some level. That's my dream for you. But I want it to be work that you enjoy. If you did a job just for money your whole life, that's fine. That's respectable. But let's figure out how to transition to something for the final third of your life. And I hope you make it from 60 to 90, as I hope I do. I want you to find something that gives you joy and something that gives you purpose and something that gives you perspective. We're getting a few comments in. I see Janice is from Unconventional Advice writing in. Colbert cancellation, CBS losing dollars and host insults parent company. It looks like Letterman got out of late night at the right time. Well, that's been more than a decade. And by the way, I was very lucky one day just to be walking by the Letterman studio with the old Ed Sullivan studio in Manhattan about a dozen years ago. And I believe it was the last season of Letterman. And they said, hey, do you want tickets? Being the sophisticated New Yorker, I said, oh, no, I'm much too busy. And I realized, I'm not too busy. So my wife and I went and saw Steve Martin on the David Letterman show and we were a part of the audience that last season. And of course, Stephen Colbert took over from Letterman in the same Ed Sullivan theater. So, but good point, Janice. Festus writes, started the journey last month. Thank you for re-echoing the benefit of investment goals. Well, that's great, Festus. I'm glad you're investing for your future. Joe says, hiya, TJ. Love your videos. Been doing many of your courses on Allison. So that's great. Most of my students know me from the Udemy platform, but I am on Allison and Coursera, and I think about 100 different platforms. So I always love hearing about students on other platforms. And Joe, if you don't mind, tell me what course you're taking and how you found Allison. I would very much appreciate that and would be grateful of that. Okay, let's move on to topic 3. By the way, you're watching Communiverse with TJ Walker. This is a daily show where we look at top business, technology, and culture stories, analyzing it through the lens of communication skills, all for the purpose of building your success. After 5 decades of trying, Republicans have succeeded in slashing $1.1 billion in federal funding for PBS and NPR, National Public Radio. What changed? Well, the new administration had strong ideas. Past efforts to kill Big Bird stalled under political pressure because Big Bird is really popular, especially from rural conservatives who valued local stations. But this time, Trump threatened to primary any GOP lawmakers who resisted, and they did not resist. Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts says this isn't about budgets, it's about silencing independent journalism. Republicans argue that in the age of smartphones and TikTok, public broadcasting is obsolete. Even Newt Gingrich, once the poster child for PBS defunding, now says that cuts go too far, warning that small rural stations could be wiped out. So this is a tricky issue. I'm here on this program with you not to be a pure political commentator. I'm here as a communications expert, as I mentioned, looking at business, technology, and culture stories. But politics does touch on that. And if you listen to me long enough, you'll probably figure out, okay, well, TJ in general has perspectives here. Here's an issue where I'm a bit of an iconoclast because I do happen to agree with conservatives for different reasons. But I do believe in general, with all the needs of the society and world and USAID and so many things being cut, continuing to fund more TV and more radio should not be a high priority to justify tax dollars. And conservatives, in fact, have pointed out that in the era of TikTok and YouTube and social media, is there really a crisis of a shortage of video content for people today? I cannot honestly make the case. Now, if someone wants to make the case that PBS does good work, I agree. If they say Sesame Street is good for kids, I agree. If they want to say the nightly newscast on PBS is high quality journalism, I agree with all those things. It does not necessarily reach the conclusion of, therefore, we need to take tax dollars that could be spent keeping tens of thousands of people alive in needy nations around the world, that's a higher priority. It doesn't necessarily follow to that. Now, you could, of course, make the case, well, TJ, that's not where the money's going. It's going to give tax cuts to multimillionaires and billionaires. And you are absolutely right on that. Again, the quick facts: Congress voted to cut $1.1 billion in funding for PBS and NPR. This was very much a part of the Trump agenda, where he's told members of Congress, even a lot of Republican members of Congress who represent rural areas, and the only place they get local news is from their PBS and NPR stations. If you don't vote to cut it, I am going to find someone to run against you in a primary, and I will destroy your career and I will humiliate you. And this will be the biggest regret of your life. And you know what? That works. That kind of pressure works. Here's my other observation. I've known a lot of people at public radio and public TV over the years. I've done many projects myself. I've worked as a not unpaid, but as a volunteer commentator on WFSU in Tallahassee, Florida. This was more than 40 years ago. I've been interviewed on numerous public TV shows and radio shows over the years. Everyone's been delightful. My childhood idol growing up was Mr. Rogers. So I have a warm spot in my heart for public TV, public radio, but I cannot in good conscience say with all the needs, all the people who don't even have basic health care in our country, that paying for more television should be a higher priority than that. So the real lesson here, I think, is if you want to be in the media, great. If you want to create content, great. But don't, this is similar to what I said about CBS and Colbert. Don't look to work for PBS. Work for your own company, create something small, lean, efficient, put your ideas out into the world. I will tell you, as nice as so many of the people I've met over the years at NPR and PBS, there is a lot of bloat in these organizations. They have a lot of executives where nobody knows what they do, and they have nice offices, sometimes administrative assistants. I see them at various conventions and conferences around the world. And I said, why are you here? Well, because I can. Those days are gone, and it should not be mourned, that part. If you want, and the beauty is Big Bird will live on. Shows that have a huge following, they have been gathering so much independent support for so long, so many contributions, corporate supporters, foundation supporters. The really big shows you like will continue on some form or another. It may be just on YouTube, maybe on their own app, but the big shows you already know and love will continue. Now, the hard part is news. It's in some ways much easier to do a show like Sesame Street. You make it once, it's entertaining. You can put it on replay every 3 months for the next 30 years and still make money. You can amortize those costs across a long time period. It can live online and build an audience and get new plays every day. News isn't like that. And that is really the biggest problem in this modern world of social media and of Craigslist and everything else, is people trying to do real news, serious news, especially in a rural community where no one else is really keeping eyes on what the local county commission is doing and how they're gutting programs and lining their own pockets and putting their brother-in-law on the payroll. No one's watching that. And that is a real problem. Okay, we're going to go into this next segment, final segment of the day. And I want to give a little bit of a caveat because it's too easy for a lot of people to say, oh, well, this is a political commentator and I don't agree with this person 100%. Therefore, let me just ignore him or not watch him or discount it. I am here not as a political commentator. Do I have political views? Of course, everyone does. But I'm here as a communications analyst and expert trying to decipher the news, distill, decode the news so that you have a better understanding of it and as it relates to communication skills to improve yourself. So this next topic is political. There's no doubt about it. I want to analyze it from a different take so that you can actually learn something useful for yourself and your career. Let's check in with a few more comments. Janice says, wow, you watched Steve Martin last season of Letterman, a great platform for, and a great platform for students here. Yes, it was fun. I do consider myself fortunate. It was one of the fun aspects of living in New York City, which I did at the time. But I'm also fortunate to go back to New York City on a regular basis. I'm going there today, spending tonight, tomorrow night there, going to see And Julia on Broadway with my family tomorrow. And something I'm looking forward to even more is I'm going to the world-renowned Comedy Cellar tomorrow night. This is in Greenwich Village. If you've ever seen any comedy special, whether it's Ray Romano or Louis C.K. or anyone, they're typically going in and out of the Comedy Cellar. It's considered sort of the home comedy club of the creme de la creme of comedians. Typically, anytime I go there, there's a pop-in from a celebrity, whether it's Ray Romano or Aziz Ansari. It's always a surprise. And I've been going there for 40 years. I started going to the Comedy Cellar in 1985. It's the only comedy place in the world I've been to where I can honestly say I've never seen one bad show. Every single show there is world class. They don't let anyone. I mean, the worst case scenario is you're going to see Jim Norton, who I'm not a huge fan of, but he's a famous comedian, numerous Netflix specials, New York Times bestsellers. And that's kind of the worst case scenario. So I'm looking forward to that and seeing friends and other events in New York City this weekend. So Janice, thanks for mentioning that. Joe says, I've been doing law of attraction. It's amazing. Allison is good. It's very well made. And your courses are always professional. And Pablo says, good morning. You're a Udemy student. Pablo, good to see you. Joe, I appreciate you mentioning that. I almost didn't do a course on law of attraction because I have a very mixed set of feelings about law of attraction. So I did a law of attraction course, but pretty early in the course, I tell you flat out, I think a huge percentage of the body of knowledge put out by the law of attraction and some of its star proponents, absolute complete BS. They make it sound too easy. They make it sound like visualize that beautiful 14,000 square foot mansion on the top of the mountain. Just visualize it long enough and it will be yours. That's a tiny piece of it. It's a piece of it, but it's a tiny piece of it. What they, I think, sugarcoat is all the hard work you have to do to get there. So when you see someone like Mark Victor Hansen and Jack, his partner, who are the chicken soup of the soul guys, who've become fabulously wealthy, worth hundreds of millions of dollars because they have the most successful series of books ever, the Chicken Soup of the Soul folks. If you hear them talk about, I visualized a best-selling book, and I wrote down it was going to be a #1 New York Times selling book, and it was. And that's the power of attraction. Well, what they don't tell you is, and they worked 20 hours a day for years on that first book. And they would get up every morning at 5 a.m. to do local talk radio shows all over the country. They would fly all over the country and speak for free just to sell books. They worked harder than any other authors. They promoted in a nonstop way. That's what got them to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. The visualization part, I think, is 1%. It's an important 1%, but it's only a 1%. And unfortunately, if you want to sell products and services and DVDs and CDs and online programs on law of attraction, the easiest way to sell it is to make it sound easy, that all you need is a different mental perspective and you're going to be successful. And unfortunately, that is just not the case. Okay, we're going to go into our final segment of the day. This is on Trump and Epstein. And if you're tired of hearing about that, I understand. No hard feelings if you want to sign off now. But this is a story I thought would go away by now. It has not. Trump's long history with Jeffrey Epstein is in the headlines. And this time he's on the defensive, not just from Democrats, but from his own supporters. Let's walk through the timeline. In the 1980s, way back then, we're talking 40 years ago. In the 1980s to the 2000s, Trump and Epstein were social friends. Trump called him a terrific guy and notes Epstein likes women on the younger side, like he does. Pretty incriminating. And they were seen palling around, constantly socializing. Trump would have an event of NFL cheerleaders or Playboy centerfolds at Mar-a-Lago, and there was Jeffrey Epstein. 1993 to 1997, Trump flies on the Epstein jet. This is documented. This isn't hearsay. Not once, not twice, but 7 times. In 2000, Epstein victim Virginia Goof, and forgive me, I always botch her name. I don't mean any disrespect. She is actually recruited at Trump's Mar-a-Lago to work for Jeffrey Epstein. And when I say work, she contends she was passed around for sexual favors like a bowl of fruit to wealthy men. And she unfortunately killed herself earlier this year. 2004, Trump and Epstein have a falling out. Now, it's not because of Donald Trump found out, oh, this guy likes young girls. He's a pedophile. That's inappropriate. I don't want to be close to that. That's not why Trump decided to not associate with Epstein. He didn't associate with him. He had a falling out because they both wanted a mansion on Palm Beach Island they were buying, and Trump had to outbid him, so it cost Trump more money. That's the only reason he stopped the friendship. And to be clear, they were friends. Epstein was on record as saying, Donald Trump is my best friend in the world. And interestingly enough, when you look at all the footage, all the pictures we've seen of Donald Trump over the years, because he's been a public figure now for really going on about 60 years, you'll never see a picture or a video of him looking happier than when he is in the presence of Jeffrey Epstein. That to me is, let's just say it's interesting. It's very interesting. 2019, Epstein is arrested, dies in jail. Trump calls for a full investigation. But in 2020, he said he wishes Ghislaine Maxwell well. Oh, I hope she does very well. Now, here's a woman who is serving life in prison. Not life, 20 years, I believe, for her role in sex trafficking and other sordid crimes involving forcing children to commit sex acts with older, wealthy men. And he has nothing but good things to say about Ghislaine Maxwell. Oh, wish her well. Hope she's doing well. It's very odd for someone who has a well-documented track record of showing little compassion for anyone, especially criminals, to all of a sudden be so happy and to wish so many, well wishes to a felon. It just strikes people as odd. Is there some reason why he wants to stay in her good graces? Does she perhaps have some information that might make Trump look really bad? I don't know, but any fair-minded person connecting the dots would have to wonder about that. Now, in 2024, 2025, the Department of Justice says no blackmail tapes exist, just downloaded content. Now, a little more background. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, was asked by CBS television, when are you going to release the Epstein client list? She says, it's on my desk, looking at it, reviewing, we'll be handing over everything. She later contends she just meant information about Epstein, not that there really did exist a client list. And now we're in a situation where Trump calls the whole thing a hoax and is lashing out at his own followers for even caring. Now, the Democrats, at least the smart Democrats, are looking at this like, this is Christmas time. They couldn't get better at this, because here you've got Trump on the defensive, where he rarely exists. I mean, Trump, whatever you think of him, is a master at controlling the dialogue in the media. He lives by the mantra of always attack, never defend. Attack, 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 attack. And it's worked beautifully for him throughout his career. Now, to what seems like the first time to many observers, he's actually on the defensive. And it's kind of weird, interesting, nice if you're a political opponent. But it's kind of a bizarre thing, because Trump has gone from only a few years ago and earlier saying, this is a massive cover-up, the government's hiding everything, and this must be released. And now he's saying, nothing to look at here, friends. Nope, no story here. Anyone who's interested in the story is a loser. I don't even want the support of anyone who even wants to talk about Epstein. And the problem for Trump is that his biggest supporters care about this issue more than anything. They are absolutely fascinated by this. And for foreign observers and others around the country who haven't followed this issue, a little context is needed. It has been an article of faith among right-wing conspiracy theorists that there is an elite running the world and the United States, and it's an elite cabal of powerful men who get away with murder, get away with molesting children, get away with being a pedophile, and that it is either, in their view, 100% or 99% all liberal Democrats and liberal progressive people. And they're just so evil and corrupt, they'll do anything. And Epstein was a part of that because he was friends with people like Bill Gates and Bill Clinton and others. Now, What they always conveniently forget is Epstein says his best friend in the world was Donald Trump. He groomed and found and recruited these young women at Mar-a-Lago. They are seen partying together on numerous occasions for at least a decade and a half. They somehow always forget that, which is to me truly bizarre. And they're angry. It's been an article of faith among so many people like conservative pundits Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, that this was the Rosetta Stone of bringing down the whole liberal empire controlling the world in an evil way. Well, who are those guys? They're not just podcasters anymore. Today, one of them is the head of the FBI. The other one is the deputy director of the FBI. So they actually have all this information, or they're in the organization that gathers that information, and they are angry that it's not coming out. Now, I made a prediction a few weeks ago that if information did come out and it turned out that Trump, and I'm not making this allegation, I'm simply saying if this, then this. I'm trying to use logic here. My theory was that if Trump was revealed to have, I'll be polite here, have had relations or abused, let's say 24 17-year-old, 16-year-old girls, he would simply say, yes, it's true. I'm proud of it. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to them, and they love me. My prediction was all of his supporters would say, yep, that sounds about right. Nothing to see here, folks. Trump is a great guy. The real problem is just, Bill Gates was on a plane with Epstein one time. Let's go back to talking about Bill Gates being on a plane with Epstein. That was my prediction. I'm very pleased to report to you today that looks like I was wrong. It looks like there is some line where Trump fans are not willing to cross. They were willing to say, okay, this guy claims to be a Christian, but can't even name a single book of the Bible. No problem. This guy claims to be in favor of traditional family values and yet tosses women aside and has sex with porn stars while he's got a wife and a young kid. No problem. This guy says he's in favor of law and order, but meanwhile is a convicted felon, not one, not two, not three crimes, but 41, 51 felonies. No problem. This guy says he wants to reduce the deficit and bring fiscal probity back to the country, and yet runs up $3-4 trillion deficits. No problem. They've excused away every single major hypocrisy like that. But maybe for them, the line is having sex with children. I didn't think they had a line. So what does all this mean for Democrats? It's certainly possible that when everything comes out in the wash about Epstein, there are some famous Democrats who are shown to have done horrible, illicit abusing of young girls in the presence of Jeffrey Epstein. It's certainly possible. Now, it's often lamented in Democratic circles that we have no leaders. There's no one famous. There's no clear front runner. There's no one clear leader of the Democratic Party. Well, in this case, that's good news. It means no prominent leader of the Democratic Party can be tarred with this Epstein thing in a way to hurt electoral chances in 2024 2028, because no one thinks that Bill Gates or Bill Clinton, who's constitutionally not able to run again, nobody thinks if they get tarred and feathered with this, it's going to hurt the next Democratic nominee. So from a Democratic perspective, their messaging should be attack, 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 not make up stuff, not just say we have evidence that Trump slept with 112-year-olds. I'm not suggesting playing the same game of just making up stuff. I am suggesting that they ask honest questions and ask people to be accountable and say, look, you were the ones who said this was a huge scandal. It's got to be released because there's this huge, huge scandal of this guy running a pedophile ring and having clients in wealthy, powerful physicians, extorting them, making them happy, creating all these crimes. You've been saying it for years. Now you have a chance to disclose it. Do it. Or you have to say, admit you were lying the whole time. You were just stirring things up. You can't have it both ways. It's one or the other. I can't prove to you a particular crime can happen, but I can prove to you there is such a thing as logic. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, here's this horrible, horrible set of crimes that the Democrats were hiding, come into power, have access to all that information, and then say, nothing to see here, folks, and just forget everything we said for the last 6-7 years on this. You can't have it both ways. All right, some more comments are coming in. Festus writes, I much love the fact that you kept it 100% on teaching the law of attraction. The easy part mostly was the call-in from my perspective, though you mentioned this tool. Well, thanks for giving me feedback. I'm glad you're taking action from that course. And to me, that my law of attraction course is really all about you have to take action every day. Yeah, have a vision, but then take action. By taking specific actions, that will put you into the same stream of people that are already doing what you're doing, and you can learn from them. That, I think, is important. Cleon says, Dems and GOP are guilty. Both were Epstein friends. So this is a tricky issue, Cathcart. It's very easy to sit back and say, isn't Bill Gates awful? Just the worst person in the world for taking a meeting with Jeffrey Epstein. You know, it's important. First of all, can you honestly tell me every person you've ever socialized with, you've investigated their criminal record, allegations of crime? I mean, no one in the real world actually does that. And it's very easy after the fact to second guess it. Now, with Gates, of course, you could say, well, there was already some, he already had one conviction, or I guess a plea deal to some of these issues, but it was not necessarily widely known. Bill Gates said he didn't know about these charges. And Epstein is like a lot of people in life. He's a complex figure. Yes, he was a horrible, horrible pedophile, criminal felon. But he also was someone who genuinely had an interest and a great intellect in a wide range of public policy issues. He did give millions and millions of dollars to worthwhile causes. Am I saying that makes up for the bet? No. But there are, by all accounts, plenty of public intellectuals that he liked to meet with to talk about public policy issues, donate to their causes. And they had no idea about any of this going on. Now, is that willful blindness? I don't know. But if you are running a charity to try to save millions of children from dying in Africa because of malaria, and someone says, I'd like to meet with you and possibly donate $2 million to your cause, do you take the meeting? And that's all you know. I've never met anyone in that circumstance who didn't say, let's take a meeting. The first reaction isn't, let's do a criminal search record and see if anyone's ever said anything bad about this guy. That's just not the first reaction most people have. So I don't know who's more at guilt here. And certainly quantitatively, there may be more Democrats involved with Epstein than not. But I don't know of any Democrat who Jeffrey Epstein publicly called out as saying, he's my best friend. I want to make it very clear. I'm not making any allegation. I have no secret proof here that Trump abused underage girls. Now, we do have, and I should have pointed this out in the bullet point section of setting up this topic, is we do have Trump on record as saying, oh, I love owning the Miss Teen USA contest because I can walk in their dressing room while they're getting undressed and it's okay because I'm the owner. There are a lot of upsetting things he said over the time that if you wanted to paint the picture of someone who seemed to be a likely pedophile, you would want those words coming out of that person's mouth. I'm not making any firm allegations and conspiracy connections because I want to live in the world of facts. But if you asked me, what are the chances that Trump did, in his 40s, he's almost 80 now, but in his 40s and early 50s when he was hanging out with Epstein, what are the chances that he did end up sleeping with a 17-year-old, 16-year-old? I would say, again, without any proof, I would say probably about a 90% chance. Will we find out when all of this is released? Now, I can't imagine Pam Bondi, the attorney general, who really seems like a complete stooge and henchwoman to Donald Trump, releasing anything that makes Trump look bad. I can't imagine her releasing information about all sorts of Democrats to make them look bad, and then sort of redacting, getting that black marker and erasing anything with Trump's name. But will that fly in the current media environment? I don't know. We'll see. It's a fascinating crisis to look at through the lens of communication, which I'm trying to do here, not a pure political analysis, to see how does this play out? How does someone stop the crisis and move on? Because again, I give credit where credit's due. Donald Trump is a master at controlling media narrative. And this is the only time I've seen him go several weeks and not be able to get the media to change the topic. So will he come up with something new that doesn't necessarily involve World War III, or will it just be World War III that gets people to stop talking about it? I don't know. We'll see. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks for joining me today. I try to come to you every single day with an analysis of the top news stories of the day. See you tomorrow.